Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Welcome you all here and those who are seeing from their houses. This is the last panel of the first day of 13th ENISE. And the title is Cybersecurity and Artificial Intelligence, Let's Make It Work. As Luis was saying, artificial intelligence can be used and applied in many fields, such as medicine, agriculture, marketing, among others, but also in cybersecurity sector, where the applications can solve specific problems to foresee and manage threats in an efficient way. Seeing the increase in computing capacity, the artificial language is improving thanks to robotics, machine learning, or neural networks, and therefore it has more applications in different fields, combining sectors that without AI would be less efficient. If we combine the volume of data and technology, an analyst of cybersecurity with traditional techniques cannot detect an incident of cybersecurity as fast and as efficient as it is needed. That is why they need to use AI techniques such as pattern detection or abnormalities detection in order to obtain good results. In the same way, the volume of information, which is open source, require techniques of AI such as natural language algorithms in order to place threats into context and to trend good practices in terms of AI. The potential use of AI by attackers or enemies makes it necessary to respond and defend ourselves with the same techniques, because we need to prepare our systems in order not to prevent attackers to use our vulnerabilities. There are some recent studies that state the increase of investment by companies in AI in the fields of cybersecurity. They see it as necessary in order to mitigate future cyber attacks that could be difficult to be identified through traditional techniques. That is why the application of AI in cybersecurity is a necessity. But what are the keys for it to work? In this panel, we will see the correlation between cybersecurity and artificial intelligence with an holistic point of view from three different perspectives: academic, research, and industrial perspectives. So that's why we have invited these panelists, and after the discussion, we will open a debate in order to understand the keys of AI in cybersecurity. I'm going to introduce you to our three panelists. We have Enrique Alegre from the academic sector. He is an industrial engineer. He has a PhD in IT. He is a professor at the University of León, and he has led many projects, among others, two European projects against sexual abuse to minors. He has published many articles and has 11 patents. He has done some research in Malta, Holland, United Kingdom, and United States. His field of research is AI in general and also in automated learning in several fields, such as cybersecurity. Enrique, whenever you're ready.
Well, so this is my presentation. I'm the main researcher of this intelligent vision group of the University of León. Our group is working in artificial vision and automatic learning, machine learning, and we are working right now also for many years with INCIBE. I'm going to talk in my presentation about the application of our group in artificial intelligence. I'm going to talk about some examples in the forensic and ASEC projects, and now I will also comment the project that we have with INCIBE, and I'm going to specifically mention what we are doing regarding natural language and artificial vision. Our group started working in 2003. More than 16 years ago, we started working on artificial vision, and also we started specializing in cybersecurity and cybercrime. The ASEC ASEC project aimed to help the Spanish police agency in order to help manage the cases of exploitation of children. When this project finished in 2014, we started collaborating with INCIBE through a framework agreement by expanding what we had already done. So our objective was to research and to implement specific solutions with the different techniques that could fight against different types of crimes. At the beginning of this year, INCIBE led a company called Forensics, in which we participated, and which was aimed to fight against exploitation of children through forensic tools. On the right, you can see the different tools that the law enforcement agencies have in Spain and that have been developed by INCIBE. INCIBE provides tools to these organizations that help them do their daily work. We are working with the technology department directed by Ignacio González and Antonio Sepúlveda, who is the project manager of the projects that we carry out. We are working closer and closer with INCIBE, and since the very beginning of projects, we offer these projects the intelligence part, the decision-making part, by using artificial vision or our natural language processes, and also deep learning, machine learning, etc. We're starting also working with speech processing tools. In the ASEC project, our role was related to artificial vision. I'm going to comment on one of the applications briefly. So let's imagine, for example, that the police collects some images and wants to see if it is connected to other cases that the police has or is already investigating. Well, we can have a policeman that remembers all the pictures of the different cases. Then also they can start reviewing the thousands of images of previous cases. And other option is using the tools that we are developing and that they already have, that allows them to select an area of the image and consult that if this information is part of other images from previous cases that may have. This is also helpful to identify victims, perpetrators. You can also look for images in which the faces of the people involved are covered. When we started working in these ASEC processes, we kept on improving the exploitation tools that we had developed, and we started working in crime detection in darknet by applying the natural language process. We saw that these tools could also be applied to terrorism by doing image or text identification, and nowadays we are also working on cybersecurity matters related to botnets on malware payment applications. Also, in the INCIBE framework, we are working on different projects too. For example, let's imagine that police wants to monitor the activity regarding drug trafficking. Options would be looking for activity in the net, or using one of the tools that INCIBE has developed, going to a dashboard and selecting for the drug trafficking group which activities are active, or ordering this information regarding the different words, specific words, etc. We code the text, we have some embeddings, some codings, we classify information through models of supervised learning, and after that we supervise and we include the different web pages that may be of interest. Also, we have tools for text detection. We are applying also artificial vision tool processes, as in the ISSEC process projects that I've mentioned. Something very interesting too is the spotting applications that let you identify text in different applications, and also we have resolution techniques that help us also provide some tools to the police for some cases. But finally, I just want to say that in the forensic project, we want to develop forensic tools so that when the police goes into a place, can detect in a computer documents that may be related to children exploitation, images or text, both. We are working with Groningen University in Holland, and our task involves detecting child abuse through face detection, age detection. We have classificators that can know if we are dealing with child pornography or not. And finally, the final line of work that we have is seeing if a file, because of the name, can contain children pornography or not. Well, thank you so much, Enrique, for presenting these very interesting cases. Now, and from the industry, on behalf of the industry, we have here Iván Rodríguez, an account manager of Cloudera. He has many years of experience in cybersecurity. In 2015, he started running the local in the local company Cloudera. Previously, he had been in charge of similar positions of other software companies. Iván, please, you have the floor. Well, thank you so much for having invited us. As Beatriz was saying, I'm working in Cloudera. I started here 5 years ago in Spain. What the company is doing is working on free software of machine learning and big data, and this is afterwards applied to different business. Regarding cybersecurity, we are working in very interesting cases too, and it's almost a need to handle this type of platforms. This is more or less the evolution of this type of technology. In the last 11 years, this was the first company that started commercializing this type of solutions. The first use cases were just analytical cases, and then we moved to incorporating databases with certain value in which we could start looking for specific information. Then we started working in real time, and in 2016 we were witness of an expansion in the machine learning field. And this is an important change because we moved from doing analytics to talk about probabilities and predicting behaviors depending on the information that we have, and also we could start programming machines so that they could make decisions. The last step talks about digital transformation because it is in this moment in which we know that the companies are experimenting this type of digital transformations. Also, we can see that companies that may be interested in this type of fields are not just technology companies, but also businesses, normal businesses, because they are part now of the strategy of companies. The main characteristics of these technologies are scalability. Open code has shown that is the model that allows to have a faster innovation, and also security has been always linked to the development of this technology, because we come from the idea of democratizing information, access to all potential data, to all users, and this is in the end exposing information, and this is why we have very solid capabilities in all the layers, from authentication, audit, etc., so that we comply with the needed and appropriate regulations. And in critical scenarios, both in private and public sectors, and even in ministries of defense, etc., the adoption of these tools happened already years ago. These are some of the figures that I would like to comment. 67% of companies last year were exposed to cybersecurity threats. As an average, it takes 8 months to detect an advanced threat. Even they happen in a matter of minutes. And the losses account for $450 billion. So cybersecurity, as I was saying at the beginning, is a big data problem. Data are growing exponentially, and there are different risks depending on the development of new technologies. Complexity is also increasing. Here we have the adoption of different container systems that are now considered standards, and this adds complexity because if we want to be flexible and in our infrastructures, we need to create clusters and destroy clusters, and all this information must be traceable, which is also complex. And here also you can see the capabilities of people, because we are finding that data experts work 80% of the times preparing just the data, cleaning the data, etc. So scientific profiles of experts should be released from these tasks so that they can spend most of this time doing research. I think we are running out of time, so I don't want to talk about these figures because these are just forecasts of how the number of connections and users are going to grow in the following years. But, well, in the end, big data is going to grow in the coming years. And how are we implementing these big data technologies in the cybersecurity field? Where there are many options. Many companies have CM, a very interesting tool. But escalating this type of tools is not that easy because of the number of data, the pricing, etc. So same thing that has happened with different appliances that have been complemented with data lakes in order to store and to do massive processing of data or adding complexity. Well, the same thing has happened with these systems. So with many clients, we are seeing that they complement their CM, their SIEM, with other type of modules. There are other options too, because now new closed or solutions need this type of platforms. So we also have to face this type of cases. And in fact, we are working with this type of situations more and more. In the application layer, we are using open sources, open softwares, and there are different projects. For example, the one coming from Cisco that is called Apache Metron. And we can work with these systems and do maintenance also with these systems integrated. And we can have this platform and also the cybersecurity layer of open code. So we have Apache ENISE, which is an evolution of the NSA company association, and well, as you may imagine, this is very safe, very secure, and very scalable. All these data afterwards go through a parsing phase, normalization or standardization, enriching phase with external, internal sources. And it's also important when talking about these applications or other type of applications to say that data must be available, but we need to have the context, metadata, so that we know the impact that this is going to have in the business and that we can assess that impact. And then we have a profiling phase in which we can detect actually the alerts. Here we incorporate algorithms, open algorithms, as Beatriz was saying in the beginning. We can use libraries that may be available on the internet, and we can also model these mathematical models as a service. So when we are acquiring the data, we can already make them work. So these are real-time solutions already. And then we have upper layers, such as presentation layers, in which users, depending on their profiles, can work with different dashboards to manage alerts, or with editors in order to make the most of the components of the pile of big data. And here's when I can mention mathematical models or the Apache Metron. And well, this is the information that I have for you, which is very interesting, but also you can look for it on the internet. And to close up, this is something that can be applied to all type of industries. We have clients in public and private sector, and our goal would be to have a unified view of the risk, scaling the projects as needed regarding streaming of data, and also offering real-time threat detection or anticipation based on behaviors that we know can be dangerous. Well, this is it. And finally, I just want to give you an example of one of our clients, security intelligence company that works globally in about 70 countries with thousands of clients. The problem is always the same. They saw that in 3 years, the number of data was going to be multiplied by 25. The repositories that they were using were not able to scale and perform as needed, and they opted for this solution, and they've got 60% of improvements of productivity in alert detection, and they've also improved their capabilities of advanced analytics. This means that they have done their tool more predictive and more intelligent. And there are many more examples in many different sectors, but they all look the same. Thank you very much, Iván, for your approach. Now I'd like to introduce to you Lillian Atkinson. She is an IT engineer by the University of Vigo. She is an expert in telematics. Lilian also has a master's in industry innovation and process optimization by the same university in 2009. She started working in Gradiant as a researcher, and now she is the person in charge of the line of security and privacy analytics of the company. She has also coordinated different projects at the national, international, and regional levels, and she has experience in security and privacy, cloud technologies, architectures oriented to services, and advanced user interfaces. And she has also many articles published in international conferences. So, Lilia, you have the word. You have the floor. So good afternoon, everyone. As Beatriz has just mentioned, I'm working in a technology center called Gradiant, and I'm going to give you some of the information regarding how we are applying artificial intelligence in the field of cybersecurity. But before that, I would like to talk briefly, very briefly, about what a technology center is, because this is something confusing for some people. We are in the middle between university and companies. At universities, we do R&D, but it's true that most of the times we are talking about basic research, and depending on the research, it can be closer or farther to the market. And it is true that companies also need these R&D capabilities, and they do not exactly how to cover that because they do not have the expertise or the needed resources. So sometimes what we are doing is being a bridge between these two worlds, and we do applied research so that we can get R&D closer to companies. So as technology center, we have these three, we are based on these three pillars that you can see here: connectivity, intelligence, and security. As you can see, two of them are completely aligned with the content of this panel. So now I'm going to give you some examples about how we are applying this in the field. So the first example is the anonymization of data. This is a set of techniques that are used to protect the privacy of personal data. The problem of anonymization is that it is quite complex to apply. And nowadays, especially because of the regulations that we are having, It's an issue that can be basic for all companies, especially if they want to publish or share certain details that can include personal information. And this is a complex issue because there is not a single way of doing that, depending on the type of data, what we can do, what we want to do with the data, the type of analysis that we want to carry out, and the privacy requirements that we need to comply with. The problem is going to be different. And when we are anonymizing the data, we are manipulating them, so we are losing information. So what are we doing here? Well, what we are doing is developing some tools that allow to detect for a specific set of data, depending on our requirements, what's the best way of anonymizing them. So this is the first example that I can give you. And of course, in order to do so, we use machine learning techniques. The second example I want to give you is the user and entity behavior analytics, WEBA. This means using machine learning in order to modify the behavior of users and entities. Entities may include different types of systems, so that we can determine their normal behavior and verify if there are any type of anomalies that can show, for example, if we are being attacked or our system is being compromised. And what we do in order to get that is modifying behaviors throughout the time. Typically, and depending on the problem we are facing, we will have to choose for a specific set of data, but here you have some examples. We can choose connections done from an equipment, the hours of connection, etc. And in the end, we can use this in order to detect possible security incidents that could hit better. For example, a problem with an internal attacker. If someone is starting modifying his behavior, we can try to detect it with this type of applications. And these are some techniques that we are applying in Tegra, which is the cybersecurity center of that we've created in Galicia together with Telefónica. And well, the last example that I want to present is an example of a project that we did with INCIBE, and because we had some challenges in the National Conference of Cybersecurity, because we were told that they had a lot of data from honeypots and they wanted to know how we could extract data from them. For those of you who don't know it, honeypots are systems that are like simulators of our real systems. These are vulnerable systems that we launch in order to receive the higher number of attacks possible, in order to understand, for example, what an attacker could do in order to access our systems. So thanks to the details we got from INCIBE, we developed a tool, which is the one that you can see on the screen, which is oriented towards security analysts, and we applied different machine learning techniques in order to try to analyze all the information that we had and to bring some value. And we obtained trends regarding how attacks evolved in time, the different types of attacks that were happening, etc. And well, this is it. Thank you so much, Lilian, for your very interesting cases. Now I would like to open a debate, and of course, if someone from the audience wants to ask a question, you can do it now. Feel free to ask. Well, so far we don't have questions, but I will break the ice then. After hearing these interesting success cases that you've mentioned, the application of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity in the field, and also thinking about the lessons learned, I'd like you to explain a little bit the strengths of advantages that, from your point of view, have implied the adoption of artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. And also I would like you to explain the weaknesses that you've also been able to solve in the examples that you've mentioned. Who wants to start? Enrique, for example, Lilian. Well, I would say that the problem of cybersecurity is the same problem that we can find in other aspects related to artificial intelligence. So in the end, when we have a lot of tasks, a lot of data, these tools make our work easier daily. So this is the biggest strength that we can have. And also, we are getting tools that can learn in time. They are not static, and these are solutions that, especially when talking about cybersecurity, can be very well adapted. Because in security, we have more and more threats, new type of attacks. So these type of tools that are dynamic, that are easily adaptable, and that can evolve in time and detect things that didn't exist before, is something that we must focus on and work on. Thank you so much, Lilian, Enrique, Iván. So our experience has been similar. Some of the systems that we've used, especially those related to text classification, are substituting systems based on rules. I didn't mention this before, but text identification systems can also identify phishing or other type of threats that if you are not using artificial intelligence, you have to use rule-based systems. But in the end, these rules are created by some workers that may forgot about some aspects. So this is one of the main advantages of using artificial intelligence. As for weaknesses or problems that we've found, I think one of the basic problems of artificial intelligence and deep learning is the need of providing big sets of data in order for the machine to learn. And this is a bottleneck problem at the beginning, having and gathering this amount of data. I completely agree with them, but as for the problems that you were mentioning before, this is something that we are trying to solve with these technologies too. But also we have people. I mean, we have the governance in order to achieve this data from different departments, etc. So sometimes integration, even though is kind of simple, is a problem and it takes time. Also, when using these techniques, or why we are using these techniques, I think that innovations are going to affect the bad guys and the good guys. So we are always playing the same game. We are receiving attacks, massive attacks, and very intelligent attacks. And this is why we need to be also more intelligent. And doing this manually is impossible. So this is why we need to count on robots in order to help us. And I would also like to mention education because, well, I've heard previously that this is something important, and I completely agree with that. If people with a technical background, and I do not include myself there, get quite nervous when we see that daily any member of our family can be attacked, can suffer from a phishing attack, etc. Well, thank you so much, Iván. So we've seen that adaptability from artificial intelligence and the mitigation of risks is playing an important role, but also bad guys are using artificial intelligence. I would like to also know what are your current challenges, what your current challenges are from the point of view of adopting artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. Well, I think one of the challenges is the culture of companies, meaning that everyone knows that artificial intelligence can be a valuable tool, but sometimes we do not put enough resources, such as training our staff, or sometimes companies do not pay that much attention to that because, of course, some resources must be investment. And so this is why we should further develop this type of culture also between our employees so that we know how to create set of data, etc. This is some things that could make all this process easier. So it's a matter of cultural education and having more resources so that these tools can be implemented and are useful. Iván, Lilian, I completely agree. I mean, we have to align our organizations, and it's true that doing that is not just saying it and then never do that again. In the last years, we've seen that different organizations are trying to align with all these needs, and this is very important. Lilian? Yes, I also agree with them, and I would also like to add that we have an additional challenge, which is getting this data, because before we were saying that it is a problem, and in our case, when we have to execute a project, we need data, because sometimes we don't have this data. And as you were saying regarding, as I was saying regarding honeypots, there are data sources of honeypots, but if we wouldn't have collaborated with you, for example, we wouldn't have obtained the results that we have, because we wouldn't have as many data as we had in the end. And we are going to need a data provider that can give us this data so that we can develop tools that are useful and functional and are not just a proof of concept. Yes, I would also like to add that one of the solutions could be looking for models such as the one we are testing with INCIBE, which is collaborating closely with companies. I think that research must get closer to the client, to companies, to the need, because very interesting synergies can come up. The researcher, scientific researcher, wants data. The company needs solutions aligned to their problems. So I think that this is something that we have to work on in order to create better tools that are more useful and oriented to the real problems. We are going to take a note of all these requirements because it's important that we need to be aligned in order to solve specific cases. So before closing this panel, I don't know if there are any questions from the audience. No? Okay. Well, this is the last panel. We are a little bit tired, I think. So, well, I'm going to ask a final question myself.
So, looking forward, we have discussed quantum computing and other technologies. So, looking forward, on your opinion, what opportunities and new trends in AI do you think that have potential in order to solve specific problems in cybersecurity? On many occasions, we adapt to the specific needs of companies. Now, in addition to what I have already presented, we have two work lines which are very important in this field. One is related to cybersecurity and AI in application of the industry. And secondly, we're trying to launch a new line to do some research on how to use machine learning to detect vulnerabilities in software, especially in complex systems. Many times we target what we are asked for, but nowadays we're working on that. Yes, I wanted to add that in my field, we use machine learning all the time. Machine learning was a complete shift 7 years ago, and nowadays we are already working on that. I think machine learning is going crazy in the good sense. I mean, there are many networks that can learn on their own and generate information. And I think we will be surprised in the following years because people are generating new architectures that do amazing things. That can even foresee what will happen. So I think in the future we will see a greater impact. Iván? Yeah, from our position, we can only train in that because these systems have been using GPUs for a time, and as a company, we are trying to be in line with the university. We have some labs. We had this idea from a work group in New York, and then we choose some topics so that we can do some research so that we are not completely out from what is published in the research world. Well, thank you very much. I think we already ran out of time, so I would like to close this panel with a last request. Sentence that summarizes how AI can be applied to cybersecurity and how can we make it work. Well, I would say more data, more intelligence. A classical sentence. Iván, from the industry point of view, well, right now I wouldn't know what to say. Because sometimes you need a machine that is the only one that can carry out some tasks. Well, I would say that in security we need to go a step forward, so we need to be committed to R&D. Well, thank you very much for your contributions and interventions, and thank you for all the attendees for having been here. I hope it has been a very fruitful experience. Thank you very much.